Okay.
Perfect. Hey everybody, welcome to Sex, Relationships, and Social Media. We're going to be talking about how this relates to business, not how to hook up with people online. We're going to go into how sex, relationships, and social media all come together to turn a profit. So the big question that everyone basically asks is, how can my business profit from social media? And in almost any industry, the answer is that your business can profit from social media. The big ways that you're going to be able to do this, you're going to go through basically 5 steps. The first step is going to be start with the end in mind. And what I mean here, is that you're looking at what you want to achieve with the social media. So you have 2 different wedding companies, and one might be interested in showing their photography online, while another might be interested in new client acquisition. So depending on what your end in mind is, you're really going to want to look at how to craft your plan from there. The second thing you're going to want to do is once you figure out what you want to achieve, look at who's the best in the industry. And oftentimes you want to look outside just your industry, but who's the best in the world? Because if you can study those and take some time to understand what the best people are doing, you can move forward and really create a very well-crafted plan for yourself. Third thing is you're going to want to learn about your audience. Every audience is different. One of the biggest mistakes you can make as a company is failing to understand who your audience is, what they want, and how they want to receive that information. There's many channels on social media that you can look into. But once you understand what your audience is looking for and who they are, it's much easier to move forward. Fourth thing is got to be building relationships. This isn't about getting 2 million Twitter followers. It's not about having 100,000 likes on Facebook. It's about the real people behind those numbers. Too often, companies are going to lose sight of you're talking about real people rather than the numbers. And so when you end up building those strong relationships with the individuals behind the numbers, that's when your company really starts to profit. And I'm not just talking about building relationships solely with followers, but a lot of times B2B relationships. If you're going to be running a blog, if you're going to be running an e-commerce site, I can promise you that almost every industry will have other industries that you could partner with, guest blog, and interact with in a really strong way to where you might only have 1,000 people a month coming in, but if you can make a relationship with somebody that has a company that has 1 million people a month, you can jumpstart your traffic without having to spend the advertising money. The most important thing I can say is be genuine. Above all else, you have to be yourself. If you're working for a company or if you're in your own company, you are bringing your personality to the table. Never try to be who you think somebody wants you to be. Always bring the strongest aspects you have of your own personality out into the business. Okay, so your customers are not a one-night stand. You don't want to approach them like the overeater guy at the bar. That is probably the biggest mistake that I see in social media in almost any industry. So many people are so eager to get out and interact with people on social media, even massive companies, that they just want that one quick interaction. That's their whole goal. I just want them to see my message and put it out there and jam it down their throat. And if they don't like it, then maybe I'll move on to somebody else. And that's the opposite of what you want to do. You don't want to push things onto people. You want to pull people in with engaging content, and you want to make sure that you're building a slow and steady relationship that's going to build over time. So here's one of the best examples I can give of a company that acted like a one-night stand. Is anyone here familiar with the McDonald's? Perfect, no one is. Okay, that's actually really good. So McD Stories is McDonald's took the initiative to put out this major advertising campaign with major budget where they put the hashtag MCD Stories, like McDonald's Stories. And what they were hoping for is people would share their great experiences at McDonald's. And just as a really quick reference, if you have a drive-through so that people don't actually have to come into your business, it's probably a good sign that you don't have the greatest experiences. So I'll go through and read a few of these. One time I walked into McDonald's and I could smell type 2 diabetes floating in the air. I threw up. Going further down, we got another person who shares her most memorable story from McDonald's was watching her little brother vomit his chicken nuggets into her aunt's hands. So all of these things happen. This is actually pretty relevant. I kind of like the last one too, just to understand the actual antithesis of what they're going for. McDonald's is supposed to be a family place, and they say, also, I once watched a kid with frosted tips tell an old guy, a stranger, they just got done having sex with 2 women. So I'd say it's pretty fair to say this is one of the biggest fails on social media. And this one could have been absolutely prevented. You understand your audience. You can see the way to go with McDonald's stories is not to tell stories about the experience there. That's not where your strong point is. You have many strong points in a company like that. You could talk about, many other things, but that's not it. That is absolutely not it. What you want to do, if I'm McDonald's, is I look into this big trend of health, and obviously I'm in the health industry, so I'm a little biased, but make people share their stories, maybe create a YouTube video, something like Jared with Subway. Create a video where someone lost a bunch of weight to try to get rid of that stigma that you have of McDonald's making everyone fat, which it does. Okay. So here's an example of a social media interaction on Twitter. Same platform, two big companies. This is a phenomenal interaction. I really love this. So what happened is Old Spice, who I'll preface, they're one of the best in the industry on social media. They sent a tweet out to Taco Bell. Why is it that fire sauce isn't made with real fire? Seems like false advertising. Fair enough. So this could have been really bad for Old Spice if they were slow to respond, if they responded too much on a corporate level. This could have been really bad for Taco Bell, I should say. So Taco Bell responds with Old Spice. Is your deodorant really made with Old Spices? So kind of clever, kind of witty, but here's where the real beauty of it comes in, is these came back and forth in real time. So rather than having to go through 10 or 20 steps for the Twitter account to say, well, what should we do? Talk to legal, talk to the CMO of Taco Bell. They came back with a quick, witty response, and this is one of the most popular tweets between two companies. I think both companies got a lot of really great publicity on this. So I consider that a win on both parts. That just goes back to kind of building the relationships. You want to build the relationships with your customers. And I'm going to show you an example of who I believe to be one of the absolute best in the industry. Zappos. Zappos took an idea that, to me, is absurd. Buying shoes online. I think of shoes, I think of girls that like shoes, I think of guys that like shoes. Almost everyone wants to try them on. Without being able to try them on, you have to have a relationship. And that relationship has to have trust in it. And what Zappos did is they created not just a social media culture that built trust, but they created a culture where they valued their clients. They showed them that at every single level. So it wasn't just online, and that's an important takeaway. And they ended up selling the company for $1.2 billion to Amazon. Zappos also started on a side note. The guy didn't have any connections with shoes, so he took pictures of shoes that were in stores, posted those pictures online. When those shoes sold, you go to stores and buy them. So it shows you don't have to have massive start funding. And if you guys are interested in entrepreneurship, don't let yourself be fooled by thinking that because you're new or because you don't have massive funding, you can't compete on a big level. You have to stand out. That's an absolute. You have to be better than the rest. There are a ton of people on social media, and if you can't stand out, you will not excel. There's zero question about it. You can't be more interesting, more relevant. If you can't be simply better, more entertaining, and more trustworthy, you will not make it. So let's go ahead and take a look at Aristotle's 3 pillars of persuasive speech. When you look at Aristotle's 3 pillars, you have pathos, logos, and ethos. Pathos being emotion, logos being logic, ethos being character. Character also references you as an authority figure. So online, you're going to need a combination of all 3 of these in a major way. You're going to need to be emotionally interesting. You're going to have to provide content that is engaging and elicits emotion, whether it's happy, sad, touching, something, but you have to gauge what emotion you want, and you have to plan around and shoot for that. Your progression has to be logical, and to say the least, you need to have a very strong idea of what the facts are. And even if you're writing very funny comedy, you need to be relevant. You need to have the right facts, the right logic. And with those two, you'll build yourself as a character. You'll build authority. And then once people see you as an authority or an expert figure, that's when you start to have influence. That's when there's real value behind your Twitter account or behind your Facebook page. But until you can establish all 3 of those, you're really not going to get the traction that's going to create the boom for your business or create the profit that you're looking to engage in. All right. So let's go into some great stories of social media where the biggest successes, in my opinion, came out. Local guy, Mac Miller. He had 3 million Twitter followers as of this week. But what makes Mac Miller really interesting is he's the first record label in over 20 years to top the Billboard charts as an independent label. And the way he did it was leveraging his social media. what he did was create a very unique campaign where for every 100,000 social media Twitter, for every 100,000 Twitter followers he had, he released a new song. It ended up making him extremely popular. Right now, he's making over $40,000 for every appearance that he comes out in. He was also featured in Forbes 30 Under 30. Does anyone here know who Mac Miller is? Okay, cool. That's good. All right, Kevin Strom, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. He's the guy who made Instagram. Now, here's what's really interesting to me about Instagram, is Instagram is a company that sold for $1 billion. And why that's so interesting is they had zero revenue. They never made a single dollar. And to me, that's almost absurd that they sold for that much. But what is genius about Instagram is they got to that $1 billion mark with only $10 million in funding. So they ended up keeping a really large ownership in their company. And to get from a $10 million valuation with probably like around B funding, around C, to a $1 billion sale is unheard of in almost any industry outside of social media. So to me, he is absolutely one of the biggest success stories. Justin Bieber, he's one of the highest paid musicians. And what's interesting is he was discovered on YouTube. Usher's agent found him through watching his YouTube videos and hearing him sing, and that's actually how he got his start. And he sells out concerts, but he just recently had his first top 5 hit on the radio. But the way he sells the concerts out is all through social media, all through promoting online. So that's why he's kind of interesting on that. So, all right, the next question is, what social media platform is right for your business? Because not all businesses are created equal, and I don't think that every business should use every social media platform. As you guys are probably more than familiar, there's literally hundreds of social media platforms ranging from the big 3, which I think of as Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, down to ones like Scavenger, Foursquare, Hootsuite, and there's a million other social media dynamics that you can go into. So when you're looking at which one to choose, whether it's for your business in this class or your business in real life, there are 4 quadrants to choose from. You can do nothing in social media, do a large amount over a few platforms, you can do a small amount over many platforms and kind of spread yourself a little thin, or you can do a large amount over many platforms. Now, I'm going to kind of start in reverse. The large amount over many platforms, unless you are working for a Fortune 500 or a team that has a massive, massive budget and a massive amount of people, it's going to be almost impossible to hit every platform really well. So what I would recommend for most of you is try to do a few platforms very well. If you can really stand out in social media in 1 or 2 out of, there's probably 5 relatively big. I think the top 3 are, where I said, Twitter, Facebook, and then YouTube. But you could be very big into the optimization and the SEO. You could be very big on LinkedIn. You can go into a few other areas. But I would say that if you can be really good at 1 or 2, that's a great way to make your mark and then plow forward from there. And that's actually what I did with my personal business, where I started out with YouTube. I picked YouTube because it's the 2nd largest search engine in the world, only to Google is the only one it loses to, and there's a real lack of competition there. The videos, in my opinion, are pretty subpar compared to what I expect over the next few years, and it was a way where I could get an edge and get viewership that was pretty big for my companies. Okay, real quick, if you take a look at this is going to explain what the different social media platforms are, kind of the big ones, and how they're different. So you have Twitter, and all these things go through exactly how you would post a response doing the same thing. They're all for eating a donut. On Twitter, you would say, I'm eating a #donut. On Facebook, you'd say, I like donuts. On Foursquare, you'd say, this is where I eat donuts. On Instagram, you'd say, here's a vintage photo of my donut. On YouTube, you would have a video of you eating a donut. On LinkedIn, you would say, my skills include donut eating. On Pinterest, you would say, here's a donut recipe. On Last.fm, you would say, now listening to donuts. And on Google+, you would say, I'm a Google employee who eats donuts. What this means is a lot more than just what it says, where there are some massive dynamics that cause huge differences in social interaction depending on which social media platform you are on. And I'm going to go ahead and paint social media for a real quick second as a city. If social media was a city, You would have Facebook be a place where it's kind of like a gym in some ways, where if you're at the gym, you would go up to people that you know, and you would interact with the ones that you know, but people you wouldn't know, you necessarily wouldn't go up to them out of the blue with having no prior interaction. If you're friends with them, maybe you get an introduction, meet them, but you wouldn't go up to people out of nowhere. Twitter would be more like a bar, where it's okay to go up to people that you don't know, and it's really easy to interact on different levels. And the reason why I say this is so important to understand is because you can have two people, or you can have one person that's exactly the same person, but just think of how they would act in church compared to how they would act in a bar, compared to how they would act in a business room or a business meeting. And depending on what you want to accomplish with that person, you would certainly be better in some situations to approach them in a bar, others in their office, and others probably at the church. So I'm going to explain a little bit of why that's different. The reason why Twitter is so different and why it's so valuable is it has a one-way follow system. Where on Facebook, if you and I want to be friends, we have to agree to it. We have to mutually consent and say we're friends. And that means that you can't just friend somebody without them liking you and knowing you and wanting you to be a part of their social network. On Twitter, you can absolutely do that. And so while it seems like a very minor thing that you can follow someone without them following you back, what that does is it creates a culture where it's culturally acceptable to meet and engage with new people. And that is why Twitter is very, very valuable for business, because you can meet people that you would never have an opportunity to meet anywhere else without that Twitter. You can tweet celebrities, and if you have the right tweet, you can tweet back. I've known people that have gotten jobs off of Twitter. I know that if you're looking for a job in the tech industry, you absolutely need to be looking on Twitter, because people that are the best at their jobs will post exclusively to Twitter and look at who you are. Resumes are a thing of the past, in my opinion, in this industry, where people want to look at what your LinkedIn profile is, who you're endorsed by, what you've done, and why would anyone ever want a plain sheet of paper where they could literally physically look at all the things that you've done across your career in social media and see if you're relevant or not. Okay, so how many followers should you have on Twitter? And that's a really interesting question. A lot of people think that more is better. And all else being equal, yes, more is better. Is it good to have 2 million Twitter followers? Absolutely. But way more important than how many followers you have is who follows you and how much they engage with you. If the people that you have, let's say I have 500,000 followers, but no one cares what I say. No one retweets me, no one goes to my website, no one listens to me, and no one really respects me as having that character that we talked about from the 3 ethos, pathos, and logos. If you don't have that, you're irrelevant, no matter how many followers you have. You might be able to impress somebody that doesn't understand the industry, where they look at your followers and say, that's neat. But if you had 200 followers, and they're all CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, and every one of them listens to what you say, that is essentially 1,000 times more valuable than having 2 million that don't care. So don't think about the number of followers, think about the relevancy, and think about the importance of, once again, building those relationships. Is anyone here familiar with, just by show of hands for people in the class, Gary Vaynerchuk? Wow. Okay. I highly recommend getting familiar with him. He is, in my opinion, the best in Twitter for being a guy that doesn't really have any celebrity status. He wrote a book called Crush It. He used social media to take his family business from a $2 million business to over $80 million. And he did that by using video, Twitter, and social media. His business was a family wine store. I believe he's a Russian immigrant, where his family opened up a corner wine store, and he began getting into wine tasting. His edge came from the fact that he spoke about wine in a very nuanced way, meaning that he had all the knowledge of the best wine critics in the world. But the thing that made him different was he spoke in real terms. He would say it tastes like motor oil. He wouldn't talk about the legs on the wine. He would talk in terms that every person could understand. It made him likable, and it made his business millions. All right. Using Facebook like a boss. That's a big thing. You want to really interact with Facebook in a great way. You need to engage other people. The biggest pitfall I could ever say for a company is to open up your company page as an individual user. Extraordinarily short-sighted. You can only have 5,000 friends on Facebook. you, as a company, should never strive to only have 5,000 people like your page. And in addition, it's against the terms and policies where I'm certainly not the guy to say you have to stay within the rules, because I'm not. I think that in some cases you got to take some risks and you got to judge risk versus reward. But I would never want to invest a lot of time and energy into building a presence that could instantly be taken away and is automatically limited to only 5,000 people. So I think Tough Mudder is about as good as you're going to get on Facebook. Has anyone here ever heard of Tough Mudder? Show of hands. Has anyone here ever read of Tough Mudder? Cool. So that's great. You've all heard of it. Why it's so effective is they take pictures of people, they tell a story, where they create an event that is essentially a very doable event, where no one dies on it, but they deem it the toughest event on the planet, or possibly the toughest event on the planet. So every single person that completes that event, which is basically every single person that does the event, shows their friends how tough and badass they are because they've just ran through fire, they've just climbed obstacles, and there are pictures of them doing it, and it's a talking point. And then they have a party afterwards. So they build this community that people are excited about. They share it on Facebook. It shares with their friends. It goes viral. And their Facebook page does something very different. They allow open interaction, which I highly encourage as a company. They let people post terrible things on there and say that they hate Tough Mudder, but there are more people that love it than hate it. And so it creates conversations. It makes them seem real. And in general, people are smart. They understand bullshit. They're not interested in having a censored experience online. People go online because they want to have real relationships. They want to see real people. And I think censoring is very silly with a few exceptions. I will say that I've only censored one YouTube video, which was video of the world's strongest woman in my gym. And she can back squat 700 pounds. She can bench press over 500. Deadlift over 500, by far the strongest person in the gym. And there was about 1,000 negative comments on there. And one of her friends, who's an extremely large guy in Ohio, said that we should probably take those down. He was very nice about it, but because she was a person we had a relationship with, we chose to take the comments down. But if they were typically saying something bad about my business as a whole, I would probably leave them up for the most part because I like to have that conversation. Okay, so here's YouTube. A few pictures from Gang My Style. Has anyone in here seen or heard the song Gang My Style? And if you have, cool. I believe that's the fastest growing video ever in YouTube history. Like I said, it's the second largest search engine in the world, and it's basically the most underutilized search engine. Old Spice probably does one of the best jobs of capturing that market. They're interesting, they're funny, their videos are easy to digest, and they're professionally done. Very few people in the industry are able to hit the nail on the head as good as Old Spice. So some takeaways from here is that social media has changed marketing probably forever, where now small companies can compete with major companies. And if a major company doesn't have the right knowledge behind what they're doing, like the McDonald's stores, there is no chance that they will survive in this industry. But a very small company, a mom and pop store, can do extremely well. Tom's Shoes, which is a very big company, started out of Austin, right, Jim? Started out of Austin, actually used social media to promote their philanthropy. For those of you not familiar, Tom's Shoes created an idea where for every pair of shoes that you buy from Tom, he's going to give a pair of shoes to a child in a third world country. And that went viral and made millions upon millions. And that just goes to show that someone like that can compete with a major shoe provider, like a Nike. All right, so even with great planning, sometimes shit happens. One of the best planning that I saw was Mountain Dew had an amazing crowdsourcing marketing program where they would have people pick which bottle they want and pick the color of the bottle. And then finally they came up with something that was really cool. They said, we're going to name the bottle. And what happened was this. A hacker team called 4chan hacked the names for the bottle. So for those of you that can't read, the number one name for the bottle that came up on their voting board was Hitler Did Nothing Wrong. Going down the list, they named it Diabetes, Tempest, Granny's Squirt, and that went along with a few other things. So inevitably, you always have to anticipate in social media something could go wrong. People want to say terrible things about you, And even with the best playing and the best teams, I think this is hilarious, by the way. Even with the best playing and the best teams, you're going to run into situations where you simply can't control them, but be ready for them. Be prepared. React quickly if you ever find a situation like that. But above all, be honest. Be like, our website got hacked. We don't think that Hitler did nothing wrong. We understand that we got hacked. We had a breach in security. And if you're open and honest with people, people get it. Where people get really turned off is when you start to lie or try to deceive or try to make yourself out to be something that you're not. So if you remember nothing else from the presentation today, I'd say remember these three things. Be interesting, honest, and engaging.